There is a grandfather who has not seen his youngest grandchildren in 4 long years. There is a little girl, now 5 years old, who has met him only once in her whole life, and is far too young to even remember it. And there is a king, in the twilight of his reign, quietly carrying a private ache that no crown, no palace, and no power on earth can soothe. He simply wants to know the children of the son he has lost to distance and to heartbreak. This summer, a single trip home has stirred a fragile, flickering hope that a reunion might finally happen. But standing in the way is a painful tangle of fear, security, old wounds, and pride. And so the whole nation finds itself holding its breath, wondering the same tender question. Will King Charles finally get to meet his grandchildren? Today, let me walk you through this deeply human story gently and fairly, because there is heartache on every side of it, and it deserves to be told with care. Let me begin with what is actually happening, because beneath all the noise, the facts are quite simple. This July, Prince Harry is returning to Britain. The reason is a genuine and worthy one. He is coming to mark the 1-year countdown to the 2027 Invictus Games, which will be held in Birmingham, the extraordinary sporting event for wounded servicemen and women that Harry founded over a decade ago. He has engagements planned around causes close to his heart, visiting a children's hospital, meeting veterans, doing the quiet, decent work he has always done well. But layered on top of this trip is something far more emotional and far more fragile. Because his father, King Charles, dearly wishes to use this visit as a chance to finally, after all this time, see his grandchildren again. And that simple wish has become the beating heart of the whole story. It's worth pausing to appreciate the trip itself, because it reminds us of a side of Harry that sometimes gets forgotten in all the family drama. The Invictus Games, which he will be championing on this visit, remain one of the genuinely good things he has given the world, a competition that has restored hope and pride to thousands of wounded and injured service personnel. During his time in Britain, he is expected to meet with veterans, to visit a children's hospital to celebrate the work of dedicated nurses, and to gather with the Invictus community to plan for the games ahead. This is Harry doing what he has always done best, quietly serving causes that matter, standing up for the wounded, the sick, and the forgotten. So the backdrop to this whole emotional story is not conflict at all, but service. A son returning to his homeland to do genuine good. And it is against that hopeful, decent backdrop that the far more delicate question of family looms. He is coming home to serve. The question the whole nation is asking is whether, while he is here, he might also finally be able to heal. To understand why this matters so much, you have to understand just how long it has been. King Charles last saw his youngest grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet, 4 years ago, back in 2022, when the family gathered in Britain for the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Think about that for a moment. 4 whole years. Little Archie was a toddler then, a baby really. Today he is 7 years old, a schoolboy, a whole little person with thoughts and jokes and a personality all his own, and his grandfather has missed every bit of that growing up. And Lilibet, his baby sister, has met her grandfather only that single time as an infant. She does not know him at all. To her, the King of England, her own grandfather, is a stranger in photographs. For any grandparent watching this, that detail lands like a stone in the heart. Because we all know how precious those early years are, how quickly they pass, and how they never, ever come back. And a grandfather has missed them entirely. Now, here is what makes this all the more poignant, and where your heart truly goes out to the king. Charles is 77 years old, and he has been quietly and bravely battling cancer, undergoing ongoing treatment, all while continuing to carry out his duties with remarkable dignity. He is a man who has been forced, in these recent years, to confront his own mortality. And when a person reaches that stage of life, the things that once seemed to matter so much, the arguments, the pride, the grievances, so often melt away, leaving only what truly counts: family, love, time. And there is every sign that Charles, the father and grandfather beneath the crown, feels this deeply. There was a genuinely moving moment not long ago when Harry made a brief trip to Britain and the two men, father and son, sat down together for tea. It was their first proper meeting in a very long time, and it came while the king was undergoing his treatment. It was a small thing, a cup of tea, and yet it sent a ripple of hope around the world, because it suggested that, despite everything, the door between them had not been slammed entirely shut. A father still longed for his son. A grandfather still longed for his grandchildren, and that longing, so simple and so human, is real. People who know the king well have spoken of the man behind the monarch, and the picture they paint is a tender one. They describe a father who, for all the very public hurt of recent years, has never truly severed the bond with his son. A man who, even in his fieriest moments of frustration, remains, at his core, more emotional than anyone realizes and is often moved to tears. This is not a cold, unforgiving king turning his back on his family. This is a warm, wounded, aging father caught between his duty to an ancient institution and the simple, aching love of a parent. And it is said that beneath all the difficulties, Charles has quietly kept a path open, hopping against hope that his son might one day come fully back into the fold, and that he might come to know his grandchildren before it is too late. When you picture him that way, not as a distant sovereign but as an old man missing his family, the whole story takes on a gentler, sadder light. Because whatever mistakes may have been made on every side, and there have surely been some, the love underneath it has never entirely died. And love that refuses to die, even through years of pain, is one of the most powerful forces there is. But if the king's wish is so simple, you might ask, then why on earth is it so hard? Why can't a grandfather just see his grandchildren? And here, with equal fairness and equal compassion, we have to turn to Harry's side of the story, because his position, too, comes from a place of real and understandable pain. Because for Harry, this entire situation is dominated by one overwhelming concern: security, the safety of his wife and his two small children. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in 2020, their taxpayer-funded police protection in the United Kingdom was downgraded, and Harry has fought a long, painful, and very public battle over this ever since, even taking the matter to court, a case he ultimately lost. To many onlookers, it can seem like a stubborn fixation, but you have to understand where it comes from. Harry lost his own mother, Princess Diana, in the most horrifying way imaginable, hunted by cameras, dying in a car crash while being pursued. He was just 12 years old. That trauma has never left him. And so his fear, his absolute terror that something could happen to Meghan or to his own children on British soil, is not some cynical game. It is the deep, primal dread of a boy who watched his mother die, and who is now a father desperate to protect his own family from a similar fate. When you see it that way, his caution becomes heartbreakingly human, too. And there is a further layer to his fear that deserves our understanding. Harry has spoken openly about how the memory of his mother's death shapes his every instinct as a father. He has described the terror of imagining the same thing happening again, of history repeating itself with the people he loves most in the world. For Harry, Britain is not simply home. It is also the place where his mother was hounded and where she died. It holds his deepest love and his deepest wound in the very same soil. So when he weighs up bringing his young children there, he is not making a cold calculation about status or entitlement, whatever his critics may say. He is a father wrestling with a trauma that has never healed, trying to keep his Bobbies safe in the one place on earth that terrifies him most. Is it any wonder he is cautious to the point of obsession? Any parent who has ever known real fear for their child's safety can surely find compassion for that. It may be that his fears are greater than the actual risk. It may be that a solution could be found if only the trust were there. But the fear itself is genuine, and it comes from the most painful place in his heart. And that, too, is part of why this knot has been so very hard to untie. And so we arrive at the agonizing knot at the center of it all, the tangle that has kept this family apart. In the lead-up to this summer's visit, there was genuine hope. It was reported that King Charles had warmly offered Harry and his family a place to stay at a royal residence, where crucially police protection would automatically be provided. For a brief, hopeful moment, it seemed the pieces might fall into place. The grandchildren might come. The reunion might happen. But then, painfully, the situation grew tangled and confused. Questions swirled over the security arrangements, over where exactly the family would stay, over whether the protection would cover the entire trip. The accommodation offer, it was reported, became complicated and uncertain. And in the end, the heartbreaking outcome emerged. Meghan and the two children, Archie and Lilibet, would not be traveling to London after all, over these very concerns for their safety and protection. The grandchildren the king so longed to see might not come at all. Can you feel the ache in that? A grandfather having waited 4 years, having perhaps allowed himself to hope, now facing the possibility that the reunion will slip away once again, tangled up in security assessments and logistics and fear. It is the kind of quiet, private heartbreak that so many families in their own smaller ways understand all too well. The longing to be together, thwarted by circumstances that feel impossible to untangle. And in the middle of it all, so easy to forget amid the grown-up battles, are two small children who understand none of it. To little Archie and Lilibet, there are no security committees, no court cases, no wounded family history. There is only the simple world of childhood, of games and bedtime stories and the people who love them. They did not choose any of this. They know nothing of the complicated reasons that keep them an ocean away from a grandfather who longs for them. They are simply children, innocent and small, growing up in sunny California, largely unaware that across the sea an elderly king thinks of them and misses them, and hopes one day to know them. There is something especially tender about that innocence, because whatever the adults decide, whatever the rights and wrongs of the grown-up quarrels, these two little ones are the ones with the most to lose and the least say in any of it. Every year that passes without a relationship with their grandfather is a year they can never get back, a set of memories that will simply never be made. And that, perhaps more than anything, is why so many people quietly hope this family finds a way, not for the sake of the crown or the headlines, but for the sake of two children who deserve to know they have a grandfather who loves them. Now, in fairness to absolutely everyone involved, I want to be very clear that there is no simple villain in this story, however much some might wish to paint one. The government's position is that security protection is decided based on genuine assessments of risk, carried out by an independent body, and not on a person's fame or title, and that these decisions cannot simply be overridden or handed out on request. That is a reasonable and principled stance. And King Charles himself is in a genuinely difficult position because, as monarch, he actually has no power to overrule these security decisions. They are not his to make. They belong to the government and its committees. Even if his heart aches to help his son, he cannot simply command it to happen, nor would it be right for him to be seen demanding special privileges for his own family, especially at a sensitive time for the monarchy. So the king is, in many ways, as trapped by this situation as anyone, wanting desperately to see his grandchildren, yet powerless to clear the path. Everyone here is caught in something larger than themselves, and that is what makes it a tragedy rather than a scandal. And yet, even now, the door is not fully closed, and this is where a flicker of hope remains. Because Harry is still coming. He is still making the journey home, and it has been suggested that while the children may not come to London, they might yet join their father for parts of the trip elsewhere, away from the capital. There is even a tender report that Harry hopes to bring his children to visit the resting place of their grandmother, Princess Diana, the grandmother they never got to meet, at the family's ancestral home. Just imagine that image if it comes to pass. Diana's grandchildren standing at her grave, the little ones she never held. It is almost unbearably poignant. And it is a reminder that, for all the security battles and the headlines, at the center of this are simply children and the people who love them, trying to find their way back to one another across a painful distance. So here at the end is the truth that I think really matters, the truth beneath all the noise and the arguments. Strip away the security committees and the court cases and the headlines, and what you are left with is achingly, universally human. An old man who is not well, who wants nothing more than to hold his grandchildren before too much more time slips away. A father, scarred by the loss of his own mother, who is simply terrified of failing to protect his family. A mother worried for the safety of her small children in a place where she has not always felt welcome. And two little children, entirely innocent of all of it, who deserve nothing more than to know and be loved by their grandfather. When you look at it that way, there are no villains here at all. There are only people, flawed and frightened and loving, caught in a web of fear and hurt and pride that none of them seems able to break. And perhaps that is the quietest and most powerful lesson in this whole royal saga, because this is not really a story about kings and princes and palaces at all. It is a story about family, about how easily love can become tangled up in fear and pride, and old wounds that never quite healed, about how distance, once it opens up, can be so terribly hard to close. So many of us know a version of this in our own families, a relative we have drifted from, a reconciliation we keep hopping for, a phone call we mean to make. And so, when we watch this elderly king quietly longing to meet the grandchildren he barely knows, we are not really watching royalty at all. We are watching ourselves, and every family that has ever been kept apart by things that felt bigger than the love beneath them. Will King Charles finally meet his grandchildren this summer? As things stand, we simply do not know. The children may not come to London. The reunion may, once again, have to wait. But Harry is coming home. The door has not been shut. And somewhere beneath all the security arrangements and the wounded history, the oldest and simplest force in the world is still quietly at work. The love of a grandfather for his grandchildren. The longing of a family to be whole again. And as long as that longing survives on every side, then hope, however fragile, survives with it. Perhaps this summer brings the reunion the king has prayed for. Perhaps it does not. But the hope endures. And in the end, hope and love and the willingness to keep trying may just be the truest crown this family, or any family, could ever wear. Thank you so much for watching. If this tender story of a grandfather's longing touched your heart, please do let me know in the comments. Do you believe King Charles will finally get to see his grandchildren? And do you think, in the end, love will find a way to bring this family back together? Until next time, take care of one another.